Hello, students. Let us continue the discussions about the mending wall, even in this session also. In the previous session, we have seen uh, a brief introduction about Robert Frost and his works, and an introduction to the poem Mending Wall, and that followed the discussions about the two neighbors on the wall. In this session, let us see that how the argument is continued by defending and justifying by each side, that is the one by the speaker, another by his neighbor, and how it develops and how it ends. Whether uh, one of them could compromise with each other or not, that we could see the whole poem right now. Right. Why wall is mending every year? See, this is another question of the poet. If you want a boundary between the two farms, you can build a stone wall or any kind of wall that is left to you once in a life at least. But here, every year in the spring season, they used to meet. They rebuild and mend and mend and mend the wall every year. The poet was fed up with this an idea of building the wall. At least for the sake of his neighbor's satisfaction, he could have accepted to build a wall at once. That could be possible. But the question of the poet is why it is continuing every year is a very big logical question in the mind of the poet. Though wall is built by man, still it is destroyed and collapsed every year. It could not be long standing forever. The poet is thinking that the idea of wall is of man in the world. It is not the idea of nature. This is the statement or the findings. It is not a statement. It is the findings of the Robert Frost or the speaker. What is the finding or the fact behind the mending wall every year? You could observe. We built 1 year, it's okay. Why do you mend and mend and mend every year in every spring season? When he thought of this, he could find nature itself is not ready to accept the wall. There is no idea of wall in the mind of nature. It is generated by man himself, and he himself has created, and that is shown by building a stone wall between the two farms. This is the another the question of the poet. Why wall is mending every year? The idea of wall is deliberately created and referred to present the differences and faithlessness. When there is a faith with his neighbor or his fellow beings or somebody else, there is no need of such kind of walls and something else. But when there is no faith and we are not worthy enough to keep the faith, then naturally they have this. It is man made for man. The wall is made by man for the man only. It is not nature made. It is for the poet argument. For the protection of all their properties or lands. The poem begins with an exploration, curiosity, and need for gap. And when we read the poem, there is something that does not love a wall. The very word create a kind of aspiration, a kind of curiosity, and it interprets uh, something about the gap. Something about the gap. We see that. It is presented well in every first line of the poem, the very first line, sorry, very first line of the poem. There is something that does not love a wall. The line states that there is a force that does not like a wall. The poet thinks that there is a force in the nature that doesn't love a wall, so it destroys unknowingly. The destruction of the wall, it is not made by the man himself, it is made by the nature itself, by the force. That is, there is a natural force that naturally destroys the wall every year, and man is going to build or mend the wall every year. It is one is creating, another destroying. That is the destroyer and the preserver. Nature is destroying the man-made wall, and the man is trying to preserve that wall, to preserve their good relations. See, that is a contradiction between the man, idea of man, and idea of the nature. This is what the poet is highlighting in this poem. The line states that there is a force, natural force. There is a kind of force that does not like a wall. Nature never loved any kind of wall at all in its creation. So the built wall is destroyed every year in spring, and the poet and his neighbor meet and rebuild the same for many years. Every year they are doing this. Because of this reason, he calls it as mending wall. Why the title has become mending wall? Because they are mending, that is not mended. They are mending every year. They are building every year. It is not built. They are mending every year. So the title is called as mending wall. Now let us see the argument of the neighbor on mending wall. Specific argument. We see the two arguments of the neighbor. One is of neighbor, another is of the speaker, that is the poet. In the poem, the neighbor of the poet demonstrates that good fences create or make good neighbors, and how people can preserve their long-standing relations by finding such wall. The argument continues by this statement. As a savage, he defends the same and mends the wall in every spring. The poet finally fed up with and calls him as a savage or uncivilized man. He is always demanding and forcing the speaker to build a stone wall every year. He is not a human being at all. In the eyes of the speaker, it becomes a tradition for him. His neighbor is so happy to mend the wall every year. He was not at all unhappy, he was not at all fed up with this. He was not at all bored. He was not at all disappointed by keep on mending the wall every year. He is so happy. So, for the neighbor, it has become a tradition. As every year we celebrate some festivals traditionally, and how it has become a custom for us. So, in the same way, mending a stone wall every year between their farms is a tradition for the neighbor. But it is not wholeheartedly rejected, or accepted and rejected by the speaker. This is the conflict. Their argument lies. He never accepts the forms with the wall. The argument continues till the end of the poem. It never stops. Because he does not have a faith on poet and justifies that good fences make good neighbors. With the same statement, he is arguing and defending that good fences make good neighbors. In this, he tries to justify his views with the poet. Let us see the argument of the speaker. The speaker is fed up with uh, the mending the wall every year in spring. He is not at all happy. So he admits that there is no need for any boundary to keep the lawns or to keep the relations. Mending the wall is an unreasonable activity. There is no reason behind that. There is no logic behind this. It is unscientific and it is unreasonable activity for the poet. He justifies that nature itself is not in favor of this fence between the farms. Hence, the built wall is being destroyed by the force of nature and it does not love wall. He says that there is something that does not love wall. This is the statement of the speaker. And the statement of the neighbor is good fences make good neighbors. The argument is between these two statements. That still continues. Now let us see the grounds for their justification. On what ground they are going to justify their statements. It causes the frozen ground so well underneath wall. The poet thinks that in every summer or in spring season, it destroys and they started rebuild the stone wall every year. The justification of the poet is that it causes the frozen ground so swell underneath the wall. This creates gaps in the wall so big that the two people could walk through them side by side. The gap itself is created by swelling the earth by the nature in every year. Spring is the time for mending the stone wall between the farms for them. Wall excludes people and injures harmonious relations, according to poet. But his neighbor argues that they allow people to treat each other fairly and prevent conflicts. That is what he says. His neighbor lives over the hills and moves in a deep darkness. According to finally, the poet has fed up with and is telling that he is a savage fellow and he lives over the hill and moves in the deep darkness. He could not find any kind of light. This is what the final that is the thoughts of the poet on his neighbor. He does not want to think beyond a set idea about the world and likes having articulated this idea so clearly. It has become a habit and tradition for him to argue having only one statement without any logical reasons. So he used to say good friends is necessary to have good neighbors and good relationship with them. This is what he is constantly that is arguing. Let us see that the argument is continues at the end of the poem. What finally Robert Frost does and how he concludes the poem and how he tries to wisdomize his subject or the message. Let us see in this slide how the poet is going to conclude the argument, long-standing argument between the neighbor and the speaker. Conclusion lies with the reader's response to argument. Finally, Robert Frost he comes to the decision that the readers, the true readers, the honest readers, can justify and can understand, can accept which is good and which is bad, whether wall is necessary or not. It is accepted, approved by the readers, not by the poet himself. This is a final acceptance of the argument on each side. It led to the readers. Right. The poet's apples are not going to eat neighbor pines trees is the poet's final strong belief. We know it well. No, either the apple tree or the pine tree get across each other to destroy themselves or harm themselves. But why wall is need? That is the final argument of him. The work of mending wall is a ritualistic in every year of spring. For the neighbor, it has become ritualistic. It has become a tradition with great, strong faith as a worship. You could come and build the wall with great happiness. He gets some delight by mending the stone wall every year. But poet is not like that. The argument seriously continues throughout the poem. Ultimately, the poem allows the readers to decide for themselves. The vision of human community is most convincing. The idea of mending wall and its cause and effect is in all kinds of socio-political institutions even today in the world. The final judgment, uh, it is left to the readers. The readers could or they may accept the argument of his neighbor, that is good fences make good neighbors, and the poet is saying that there is no need of wall. uh, it is not the right activity of the man. Wall is not essential. The nature itself is against building and mending wall. This is the argument of the conflict of the two persons. Finally, the poet let it to the readers. They decide what is right and what is wrong. This is how the poem, that is the poet concludes the poem with a uh, that is a judgment that it is left to the reader. That is reader's response theory. That is one of the popular theory today we see uh, in the criticism. We see that it is one of the approach, reader's response theory. Let us see the how we readers, and you have read the poem and we have discussed the poem so far for in the two sessions, and now you the readers and we the readers try to that is judge the judgment left to us, and we try to judge whether the speaker is right or whether that is the his neighbor is right. That we shall think, and this judgment goes till the doomsday. The man can decide. The readers of the Robert Frost can decide what is good and what is bad. There is a conflict between these two, virtue and vice. That is what we find in the whole poem. Thank you for listening and understanding the poem. That is written by Robert Frost on Mending Wall. Thank you very much. Meet in the next session with the next topic.